Welcome everyone back to the Coalition for Marriage YouTube channel. What a privilege to have you joining us again. If you're here for the first time, as I always say, with the UK's largest pro-marriage organisation, we represent tens of thousands of individuals and groups who are really passionate about this thing, one man, one woman marriage. I always say this, before it gets your backs up. That doesn't mean other things don't exist in society. Clearly they do, but we think marriage is something unique, something special, something that only one man and one woman can do. And the evidence seems to support that that's the best way of bringing about the best version of the next generation. Now, a lot of people say that, a lot of people believe that, some people pay a price for doing so. And we spoke to somebody last August who was in the middle of a really hard time with her employer because outside of work she had said she believes marriage is between one man and one woman. She's back with some excellent news today. First, let's say hello to Maureen Martin.
Hi, Tony. It's great to be back. As Tony has said, that I was here last August to share my story, but great news. I've got a wonderful update for you all. So I look forward to getting into that with Tony today. So
that would I cannot tell you how exciting it is to have you back to just to talk to people about what you've been through, the difficulties you've been through, the success you've had, what that means for other people, etc., etc. But let's just remind people briefly, if you would, Maureen, just the basic facts of your case, what we discovered last August.
Yeah, certainly. Last year, April, it's also been almost exactly a year, in fact. Last year, April, as a political activist belonging to the Christian People's Alliance, a political party with a very Christian slant, I was running for mayor of my local borough, Lewisham East, and I put out an election manifesto promise, 6 of them, and number 3 just happened to be that I stand for traditional marriage being between one man and one woman, and that is the safest place to rear children. Well, you can imagine there's some people in my community, my constituents didn't like it. Well, fair enough. That's free speech. You are free to disagree or agree with me, as our free speech does allow us to do. However, there are some people who were connected to people in my constituency who complained to my employer, and my employer decided to put me through a disciplinary, accusing me of being homophobic and discriminating against LGBTQ people. And they did that, and they fired me as a result of their investigation, disciplining me. And after which, of course, I decided to sue them because what they did was quite unlawful and against all of my rights according to the Human Rights Act. I sued them with the help of the Christian Legal Centre. And I'm here to update on what happened with that case. So that's what happened last year, basically.
And so you essentially, you did something outside of work. You said something outside of work. You didn't say anything offensive. You stated a fact in terms of the best way of bringing up children. That's just a statistical reality. Nobody can deny that on a population basis, that is in fact the case. It's much safer, much better in terms of outcomes to grow up with your married biological mum and dad. That's just a fact. It's just the way it's been. It's just the way it's always been. And you were just saying, actually, you believe marriage should be between one man and one woman. That's something which the law has recognised is worthy of respect in a liberal democracy. The Public Order Act actually gives you explicit permission to say those sorts of things in public if you want to. So as far as you were concerned, you were doing nothing wrong.
Absolutely, Tony. And during my discipline, I did provide them with, peer-reviewed studies to prove just that it is the safest place to rear children. We're not saying it's the only place, but it's the safest place.
And just saying that, the law says expressly that just expressing that belief is not in itself hatred in any way, and it's not. So the idea of calling you homophobic, that you hate and fear an entire class of people just because you believe marriage should be between one man and one woman, is ridiculous and just a way of silencing you.
Absolutely. I mean, my employer basically accused me of gross misconduct, which is what they called it. But I mean, I did pose the question to them, what if I had actually made a statement in support of same-sex marriage and Christians complained about it too? Would their response have been the same? Of course, they didn't answer that question to us, but we know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
The response would be completely different.
Yeah.
Because the attack was really against the Christian basis on which I said that. That is a biblical standard. That idea came from God, it came from the Bible. And the attack was really not against my political agenda or my political standing. It was against my Christian views.
Let's make it clear. I mean, we have supporters from all faiths and none. I think, if I'm honest, most of our supporters are one flavour of Christian or another, but we do have people from other faiths, and we do have a significant amount of people with no faith who actually just believe that marriage between one man and woman is actually unique and special because, you know, the whole of society and most of history says that that seems to be the case, which is great. Tell us a little bit about just clarify the legal process. So you didn't go through the tribunal process, or did you? Because when you said you sued them, how does that differ from the tribunal process?
Well, actually, what I meant to say was I did put an application into the Employment Tribunal to hear the case for a tribunal judge. Yeah. So when I say sued, I mean that I actually made application to bring the case to a tribunal. So,
great.
Of course, the beauty of doing that is it does place the employer in a position where they have to then make a decision. You put pressure on them, are they going to go to tribunal or they're going to offer to settle out of court? So this is the importance of making the challenge in the first place. Because you don't make the challenge, they're not put in a position where they have to make a decision. And I think this is the key to, if anyone else is out there who's having challenges with an employer in whatever capacity and they're being persecuted for their beliefs, particularly their traditional beliefs, it's so important you challenge, you actually ask them to explain themselves, put in a position where they have to make their case, if you like, and not just walk away, because walking away doesn't achieve anything. It's a lose for the person that's being persecuted. It's a losing situation. You need to challenge those who are persecuting you, basically, and force them into a place where they have to make a decision. So that was the idea, and it actually worked quite well.
So what was their argument? I mean, how did they possibly try and defend their actions?
Well, their arguments were based purely on their own internal inclusion diversity policies. The internal, inclusion and diversity policies that most companies have. And their internet usage policy. Well, I can actually break the internet usage policy, but they accused me of not only gross misconduct, but also failing to tell them that I was politically engaged. They were trying to make the case that I failed to disclose my political activities, and saying it would be a conflict of interest, which was a very weak argument. It had so many holes in it, I'm sure it's sinking. And of course, all the other points that they were accusing me of, they were in breach of my rights, because they were refusing
your rights under the law.
My freedom of speech and my freedom of expression. And when you consider that religion is protected under the Equality Act, they were in stark a violation of that act. It seems that some qualities or characteristics are more equal than others. And Christianity for them is pretty low on the totem pole, or religion, I should say, is pretty low on the totem pole for them. So their argument was very thin and, not very strong. And I suspect that they had a feeling that when they went to court, they'd have a big challenge making their argument.
And you'll find this in so many. I'm familiar with other cases, and in other cases you find this, that they'll go for a technicality because they know they don't stand a chance on the main grounds. And so, with you, I was wondering, well, because your manifesto it commented on lots of different things, one of which was housing policy, and maybe they'll get her because she was talking about housing policy outside of work publicly, and maybe that's in breach of a contract, and they'll get her on the technicality. But that didn't happen.
Well, they're trying to go down that road as well. This is what I said about the conflict of interest. They're trying to say, well, you did mention housing policy. Right. Your housing policy might be different from ours. Mm-hmm. Well, I said, well, if I got elected as mayor, clearly I won't be working for LNQ anymore. So that's the irrelevant point. You understand? So you're quite right. They were trying to hook other things onto it to provide these other technicalities that they could fall back on. knowing that the general case wasn't very strong.
Very familiar with the process. Now they didn't go to court. They decided to settle, which is quite interesting. Does part of you wish they'd gone to court?
Well, I had the choice of whether to accept the offer or not.
Yeah.
I could have refused the offer and said, no, I'll see you in court. But as a very strong Christian, I had to seek the Lord first, ask what he wanted me to do. There's no point in me just doing what I want to do. I want to find out what God wants me to do. And he gave me a scripture verse, Matthew 5:25, which says, settle quickly with your adversary, basically. And when I looked at the word adversary, it's quite specific. Someone taking you to court. The word adversary was very specific and related so directly to my case, I couldn't ignore it. It was definitely the law saying settle. But of course, it was the negotiations back and forth for a little while. But he definitely directed me to settle in this case.
Yeah, and a tribunal sets a precedent anyway. It sets a legal precedent. So that's something which is in your favour anyway. And also, depending on what the kind of cash they offered you, if you go to court, you could theoretically lose out even if you win, because legal fees and all sorts of things like that.
Absolutely.
So it's an interesting thing.
Absolutely. They could have looked at their offer and said, well, it was actually a fair offer. I mean, and they might have given me less.
Yeah, exactly. So you could end up in a worse.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, well done you. But what I'm keen to talk about is so often the case is the process is the punishment. You may have won legally, but actually what you've been through in the last year and a half is nobody's business, Maureen. And the sort of vitriol you've been exposed to, the sort of harassment you've been exposed to. You lost your blooming job. You lost your income, your source of money. That's quite significant, and it was completely unfair. How does that feel, just getting through that and living through that?
It's very significant, Tony. I mean, you consider I worked for this company for 13 years with an unblemished record. I was one of the best managers they had. And quite frankly, I'm sure when they fired me suddenly, they really felt it, because I was pivotal to that particular, and the role I was playing. I was really quite a pivotal person in that part of the organisation. So I felt it quite keenly. All of a sudden, my income's cut off. I'm here living with an elderly parent. I have to go and tell my parent that I've lost my job, and they start to worry. Elderly people do worry quite a bit. So it's a bit of a shock.
The whole thing caused, I think that there was a petition that the government should strengthen the law. I think 47,000 people signed it or something, that the law needs to be clarified and strengthened, because actually the law makes no ranking of protected characteristics under the Equality Act, does it? It states them all. And it's wrong for employers to say, well, we think that group are above that group, so we're going to rank them higher in terms of protection.
They don't say that, but by their actions, they are saying that, right?
Yeah,
that's exactly right. There is no ranking, but we can see from their actions there is a ranking. And the ranking for them is the LGBTQ is top of the list.
Why is this the case? I mean, I can imagine you were a lovely colleague to work with. I've spoken to you personally outside of videos, and you're a lovely person to talk to. There's nothing offensive about you. Why would they, automatically say, well, actually, somebody else's right not to be offended is more important than your right to express what you believe? I mean, why would they come up with that?
Well, because a lot of these organisations, Tony, are really sold out on the Stonewall agenda. Stonewall, I think, has kind of promised all these sort of perks. If you sign on to our organisation, we're going to offer you all these perks and all these advantages of being aligned with us. And my former employer was very much sold on the Stonewall agenda. And in fact, they were up for an award from Pink News for being such a champion on the LGBTQ agenda.
For breaking the law.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. For breaking the law.
Well done, guys. Yeah. You broke the law. You discriminated against somebody. Yay, that's what we want. How ridiculous. How ridiculous.
It is.
Well, listen, Maureen, how you got through this, I don't know. Tell us about your plans. I mean, obviously it would be too awkward for you to go back and work with this organisation, I'm guessing. So what are your plans now?
Well, my plans are to continue working with the CPA, Christian People's Alliance, a great Christian political party. And I'm very much involved. I'm the president of the party, so obviously I have quite a few responsibilities. I'm doing quite a bit of media as well. I'm on Revelation TV quite regularly, on Politics Today with Simon Barrett, at least once a month. In fact, the last month I was on twice, talking about the coronation service. So I'm moving in that direction, doing media, working very closely and busy with the Christian People's Alliance. So these are the directions I'm moving in. So I just really relying on God to order my steps. I have no intention of returning to not only my former employer, but not even that field at all. So I think it's time for me to step into what I was, anointed and appointed to do, and not necessarily just doing a job. Which, I mean, I thank God for the job. Working's honourable in that sense, 9 to 5, nothing wrong with that at all. I, honour work. But it's time for me to work in the field that I was born to work in.
It's funny how we're sometimes brought to the place we're meant to be in through the road we wouldn't rather have gone down, given the choice.
Exactly.
But there we are.
Yeah, a bit like Joseph in the pit, right? He went to the pit, Portsmouth House, and then the palace. It's not a route he would have chosen at all to get to be Prime Minister of Egypt, but that was the way God led him. So yeah.
Well, as you would say, his ways are higher than our ways, and his thoughts are higher than all things work together for good, etc., etc., which is fantastic. So, can you give us some advice? I mean, for every successful story like you, there are, first of all, a load of people who haven't been successful and have been told, you say that again or you're sacked, or they get sacked and basically they've got no help. They haven't got the Christian Concern connection or whatever else, and they've got no help at all. Firstly, there's all those. And then there's many, many, many more who are too scared, petrified of saying something in the first place, because they look at what happened to people like you and think, well, I got a family to feed. I've got kids at home who need shoes for school. I can't lose my job and be in a situation where I know nobody else will employ me. What have you got to say to people like that?
It's a challenge. I do appreciate that. And, it's honourable to provide for your family, but it's a personal decision.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, God is our source. Our job isn't our source. God may have given you the job, but he can easily give you another one too.
Yeah.
So we really have to examine. It's a personal choice. You have to look inside. I can't provide a blanket solution answer for everyone, but it's a personal choice. You have to look inside. Who am I? Well, settle it ahead of time. So if the moment comes, you know exactly what to do.
I regularly have conversations with people, get phone calls, talk to people when we're out on tour, etc., who say, look, I get sent to these HR courses and I so desperately want to say I disagree, but I know if I do, that's me done for. And, again, just like you say, you've got to encourage people. Christians are protected by law if they say, well, actually, this is what I believe, sincerely believe in accordance with my faith. And as long as you're not being disrespectful and angry and hurtful and spiteful, you can say what, if this is what you firmly believe as part of your faith, the law protects you. But nevertheless, they'll get you for something else. And that's the problem. That's the problem.
I'll tell you one thing, Tony. It's one thing going to an HR course, but if they want you to sign some sort of document, right, that's another thing. All right, so it's okay. Okay, you go to the HR course, you don't agree. All right, we can put that aside. But the moment they start asking you to sign off on certain things you clearly don't believe, that's when you can say, I'm not willing to sign this. That's not line up with my beliefs.
Or wear a lanyard or something else like that.
Or something like that. Or do the pronouns on the emails.
Yeah.
If it's voluntary, fair enough, you have to do it. But they start insisting, you have to, well, then you can say, okay, this is not in line with my beliefs. I don't believe that, so I'm not willing to put pronouns on my emails. Thanks, I don't need.
I think that's a really, really helpful distinction.
Yeah.
I'm not a lawyer, let alone an employment lawyer, but the idea is that if your employer asks you to go on a course, well, fair enough, you got to go on the course, really. But that doesn't mean you have to sign anything to say that you agree with what was said. Absolutely right. And that's something else entirely. Yeah, you're quite right.
Totally, yeah.
And there are people like the Christian Concern, Christian Legal Centre out there, and Christian Institute who are there and always ready to help Christians. And even we've got cases, people that weren't Christians. We've got Mayor Forstarter, who had a successful case recently where she spoke out against her feelings on the trans situation, and was successful in the courts based on her sincerely held personal beliefs. So things are changing slowly, which is a good thing. And I'm very grateful that we've got people like you who frankly are brave enough to and winsome enough and graceful enough, but then bold enough to speak up and just to not be shut up. So very well done.
Thank you, Tony. I give God all the glory, because without him, nothing would be possible. And without the Christian Legal Centre, oh my word, they're so amazing. Such an amazing group of lawyers.
Yeah, great. Absolutely fantastic.
Amazing. And they're really high quality legal counsel. You're not getting some, second-rate pro bono. These are high quality, talented men and women of God. And that's another advantage. They're men and women of God. So this gives you all the clout you need, as it were. You've got the talent in the natural, and you've got the supernatural.
We're very fortunate in this country. We've got a couple of organisations that are there for and they take people's cases, and and literally it changes the law, it changes the landscape for thousands, millions of other people, which is so fantastic. Well done. Will you stand for mayor again, do you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Good for you.
I've not backtracked or
yeah, you're not easily put down. Something's telling me you're not easily put down.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If anything, I'm more determined to make the Christian voice heard in the political arena, because it's very quiet at the moment. I think it's gaining some traction, and I think the publicity that we've gained on my case and other cases has really helped us. Any publicity, good publicity, even bad publicity. It was bad for a little while in terms of the initial case, lost your job, etc., etc. But now that, it's been a win for me and the Christian voice and the Christian view that marriage is between one man and one woman. And it was in the Mail on Sunday, not last Sunday, but the Sunday before that. So yeah, it's getting some traction. We're getting publicity, and hopefully by 2024, we'll have built on that exposure, and we'll be in a good place for the general election next year. So
great. And again, we don't, as an organisation, I happen to be a Christian myself, but we approach it from the point of view of marriage is simply unique. A man and a woman, no other relationship type can replace that. That doesn't mean that a liberal democracy doesn't recognise those relationships and give them rights in law that are equal, but they're not marriage. That's the point. Marriage and redefining marriage waters down marriage, basing it on just an emotion as love, waters it down for everyone, and it hurts the poor the most. If you look at the demographic changes, the poor people who could most do with the benefits that marriage bring are the least likely to be married now, and that's an awful thing.
Exactly. And in fact, when you look at it, particularly in my community, this is one of the biggest factors affecting my community. The Black Caribbean, I say Black Caribbean, not African so much, because they actually do tend to higher rates of marriage. But in the Black Caribbean communities, one of the things is hurting us the most is single parent families.
Well, it's great that you're standing up. Hopefully more people will stand up. Hopefully the nation will begin to embrace and recognise that if we promote marriage as the stabilising bedrock of society, actually everybody wins because society gets better, so let's champion that.
Totally. You can't replace marriage between one man and one woman. It's sacred, it's God's idea, and it works.
And something tells me it will win in the end because it works. Yeah, which is great.
Exactly.
Which is great. Yeah, listen, Maureen, what a huge privilege to talk to you. I'm so grateful that you stuck it out. I'm grateful, which I knew you would do anyway, which is that you won your case. And, I look forward to hearing a lot more from you, a lot more of you, and we'll be following you carefully. When you get elected as London Mayor, will you come and give us another interview?
Of course.
Fantastic.
I love my chain on.
Yeah, excellent. Maureen Martin, take care. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you. Excellent. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.